There are few more precarious jobs on the planet than being the manager of a Premier League football club. 1 minute you can be the saviour, and 5 minutes later you're out of your depth and you've taken the club as far as you can. At the highest level, just 3 bad results is probably enough to cost you your job, and following a season in which Liverpool lost just once all season and still failed to win the title, club chairman may argue that's fair enough. Thankfully for the poor souls who find themselves in this cutthroat business, it does pay quite well, and most Premier League severance packages equate to more than the average man or woman earns in a lifetime. Today's video is all about former Premier League managers, but I wasn't sure whether we should go with the 2013-14 or the 2014-15 season as the subject of our focus. As always, in those circumstances, I consulted you all on Twitter, and if you don't follow HITC Sevens on Twitter, then please do give us a follow. I put out lots of polls like that, I share some of the stupidest comments we get, and if I were ever sacked, at least if you follow me, you'll be able to find the new channel I'd have to set up instead. Right, here are the 2013-14 Premier League managers. Where are they now? Arsene Wenger. Unattached/pundit. Arsenal took a huge leap of faith when they appointed Arsene Wenger in 1996. He arrived at Highbury following a year with Nagoya Grampus in Japan, and the response of the British press was, Arsene who? They wouldn't be asking that a decade later, when the Frenchman had completely revolutionised the English game in every aspect from diet to scouting, won a trio of Premier League titles, and became the first team in over a century to go an entire league campaign unbeaten. Wenger left the Gunners last summer after 22 years at the helm, and he's yet to take a new role within the game, but he has done some bits and pieces of punditry over the last 12 months. Paul Lambert. Ipswich Town. I should point out that we are initially going through the managers of each club in alphabetical order at the end of the season. Alphabetical order of the club rather than manager, I should point out, but at the end of the list we will include managers who were dismissed mid-season as well. Paul Lambert was one of the most highly regarded young managers in England 8 or 9 years ago, having guided Norwich City to back-to-back promotions into the Premier League. He started the 2013-14 season with Aston Villa though, and that's when things started to all go a bit pear-shaped. Lambert has since managed Blackburn, Wolves and Stoke with limited success. He joined Ipswich Town last summer but was unable to keep them in the Championship, and he's still with the Tractor Boys ahead of next season in League One. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. Manchester United. Current Manchester United boss Ole Gunnar Solskjaer took over as manager of Cardiff City in January 2014, tasked with the difficult job of keeping the club in the Premier League. He failed, and he was sacked after a poor start in the Championship the following season. Solskjaer returned to Mulder in 2015 before being handed a dream job back at Old Trafford as caretaker boss after Jose Mourinho was dismissed last season. The Red Devils began playing like the Harlem Globetrotters under the Norwegian as interim manager, who went back to play with all the passion and excitement of a commentary team of Mike Lone and Andy Murray once he got the job on a permanent. He faces a tough task next season, and Mulder may already have drafted up a third contract for good measure. Jose Mourinho. Unattached. One of the most successful managers of all time, the 2013-14 season was Jose Mourinho's first back at Chelsea. The club finished third, but won the title convincingly the following season. Mourinho most recently managed Manchester United, where he won 3 trophies and finished as Premier League runners-up, but his performances failed to please the club's fans. As mentioned, he was sacked and replaced by Ole Gunnar Solskjaer last season. Tony Pulis. Unattached. Another out-of-work manager, Jose Mourinho and Tony Pulis are 2 men with a lot of respect for each other, albeit Pulis has tended to occupy slightly less glamorous dressing rooms. The 61-year-old Welshman took over as Crystal Palace boss in November 2013, with the team languishing in 19th place. He guided them to 11th place with 45 points, a job so impressive it earned him the division's Manager of the Season award, but he left the following summer, claiming the club wouldn't back him in the transfer market. Pulis left Middlesbrough at the end of the season just gone, having dropped out of the Championship playoff places last season. Roberto Martinez. Belgium. The 2013-14 season was Roberto Martinez's first in charge of Everton, and also his best, finishing ahead of the likes of Manchester United and Tottenham in 5th place. They dropped to 11th the following season, and they were similarly mid-table when Martinez was sacked the year after that. He made a speedy return to management, taking over as manager of the Belgian national team following Euro 2016, and Belgium were only knocked out of the 2018 World Cup by eventual champions France. He has a great opportunity to win something with that team. FELIX MAGATH, unattached. FELIX MAGATH was brought in by Fulham in the hope that he would keep the club in the Premier League in February 2014, but the three-time Bundesliga winning boss could do no such thing. He had been out of football for 2 years prior to his brief stint with the Cottagers, and he took another 2-year sabbatical after that. His only job since then was a single season with Shandong Luneng in the Chinese Super League. Steve Bruce, Sheffield Wednesday. The 2013-14 season was Steve Bruce's second in charge of Hull City, and it was the best campaign the club has ever had. As well as keeping the Tigers in the Premier League, Bruce guided the East Yorkshire outfit to a first ever FA Cup final. They went 2-0 up against Arsenal in the final, but were beaten 3-2 following an extra time winner by Aaron Ramsey. Bruce is now managing Championship promotion hopeful Sheffield Wednesday, having left Aston Villa mid-season last term. Brendan Rodgers, Leicester City. The 2013-14 season was the season of Liverpool's brilliant front three of Raheem Sterling, Luis Suarez and Daniel Sturridge. Like Rodgers, Sterling and Suarez have since left Anfield, while Sturridge, it just turned out, was made out of glass. Following a stint with Celtic north of the border, Rodgers returned to the English game to take over at Leicester City last season, where he'll need something special if he is to crack that solid top 6 next season. Manuel Pellegrini, West Ham. Still in the Premier League, Manuel Pellegrini won the Premier League title in the 2013-14 season, breaking Liverpool hearts, and he now manages a team with slightly less lofty ambitions in West Ham. Pellegrini is no spring chicken at 65, but he's a shrewd operator, and he guided the Hammers to a top-half finish last season. Ryan Giggs, Wales. A lot of people felt there was something a little bit distasteful about the way in which Ryan Giggs seemed to think he was entitled to walk into a Premier League job after he retired, and following a very brief stint as caretaker player-manager at Old Trafford, none were forthcoming. A fantastic player, he took over as manager of the Wales national team in January 2018, but faces an uphill battle to ensure qualification to Euro 2020 following defeats to Hungary and Croatia this month. Alan Pardew, unattached. Alan Pardew was still the Newcastle United boss back in 2013-14. In fact, if Pardew had never left Newcastle during Crystal Palace, he'd still have another 15 months left on his 8-year deal signed under Mike Ashley in September 2012 right now. Pardew has always been a bit of a rollercoaster of a manager, and nowhere was that more definitely the case than at Newcastle. However, having typically always brought a new manager bounce, he has been out of work since failing to inspire any kind of good form out of West Brom in the 2017-18 campaign. Neil Adams, Norwich loan player manager. Who? Yeah, fair enough. I'll admit I'd forgotten about Neil Adams' brief stint as manager of Norwich City as well. The former Canary star was appointed following the dismissal of Chris Hughton, much like Alan Pardew at Newcastle, but he didn't last long in the top job. After a little over 6 months out of work, he returned to Norwich as loan player manager in the summer of 2015, and he still holds that role today. Mauricio Pochettino, Tottenham Hotspur. The 2013-14 season was Mauricio Pochettino's first full season in charge of Southampton, and also his last. He joined Tottenham in May 2014, and he has spent the last half-decade brilliantly assembling a top team at White Hart Lane. Spurs are still trophyless under the talented Argentine, but they are regular fixtures in the top 4 and reached a Champions League final last season with a budget that is a fraction of their top-end domestic and European rivals. Mark Hughes, unattached. Mark Hughes took over from Tony Pulis as Stoke City boss in the summer of 2013, before leading the club to 3 consecutive 9th place finishes. That was an excellent achievement and shouldn't be overlooked just because things started to go rather wildly awry in the year or so that followed his third campaign. The former Manchester United and Chelsea Player of the Year award winner has had just one role since being sacked by Stoke, which was an uninspiring spell in charge of Southampton. He is out of work at the moment. Gus Poyet, unattached. Well, we said Premier League management was a cutthroat business, and that is reflected in the number of Premier League bosses half a decade ago who are now out of work. We also said it paid well though, and that applies to former Sunderland boss Gus Poyet, who on suspects earned a small fortune during his season with Shanghai Shenhua in the Chinese Super League a couple of years ago. He most recently managed Bordeaux in Ligue 1, but was fired after a little over 6 months in charge. Gary Monk, Birmingham City. Despite still being a baby in managerial terms, aged 40, Gary Monk has already managed 4 decent-sized football clubs in a real rollercoaster ride of a brief managerial career. Most people thought the Swansea legend was bitterly unfortunate to be sacked after a poor run of games in 2015. He had a good debut season at Leeds, but left following an ownership change to join Middlesbrough. His time in the North East was less successful, and Monk joined current club Birmingham City after getting sacked by Borough. Tim Sherwood, Pundit. I'm not sure if Tim Sherwood still harbours aspirations of making it in football management, but the former Blackburn star has been out of work for almost 4 years now. He ended the 2013-14 season in 6th place as Spurs boss, but was replaced by Mauricio Pochettino the following summer. A brief stint at Aston Villa and a spell as director of football at Swindon Town, both unsuccessful, have been Sherwood's only involvement in the game since then, seemingly focusing more of his efforts on punditry work with the likes of Sky Sports and beIN Sports. Pepe Mel, Las Palmas. Another incredibly forgettable former Premier League manager, former Real Betis striker Pepe Mel lasted just 17 games in English football. Those 17 games came at West Brom, but having won just 3 of them and only narrowly securing Premier League survival, he left by mutual consent the following summer. Mel has since managed Real Betis and Deportivo La Coruña, and he took over as Segunda Division side Las Palmas' manager in March 2019. Sam Allardyce, unattached. The last of the 20 Premier League managers who ended the 2013-14 season in charge of a club, Sam Allardyce spent 4 years at West Ham United. He subsequently guided Sunderland to survival, an achievement deemed sufficiently impressive to get him the England job. That lasted just 67 days due to allegations of malpractice, and Big Sam has since managed Crystal Palace and Everton. Paolo Di Canio, unattached. A talented footballer who looked to have a bright, albeit controversial future in management at Swindon Town, Paolo Di Canio hasn't held a job since being sacked by Sunderland, with the Black Cats in last place in the Premier League in September 2013. Di Canio has reportedly applied for jobs at Bolton Wanderers and Rotherham United twice, but to no avail. Ian Holloway, unattached. Crystal Palace looked to only be heading in one direction under Ian Holloway in the Premier League, and they were in 19th when he was sacked in 2013-14. The 56-year-old has since managed Millwall and QPR, but has been out of work since his departure from Loftus Road more than a year ago. Martin Jol, unattached. It's quite possible that Martin Jol has retired from football management, aged 63, and having been out of work since 2016. But with no confirmation, I wouldn't want to make any assumptions. The former Tottenham and Ajax boss last managed Al Ahly in Egypt. Steve Clarke, Scotland. The second national team boss in this list, Steve Clarke was appointed the new Scotland manager last month following an impressive spell with Kilmarnock. An assistant manager to the likes of Jose Mourinho and Kenny Dalglish, Clarke made an impressive start to life as West Brom's first team boss, but was sacked in his second campaign. Andre Villas-Boas, Marseille. A man who featured in our look at the last 7 Europa League winning bosses not long ago, Andre Villas-Boas recently returned to European football, taking the reins as Marseille boss in Ligue 1. Malky Mackay, Scottish FA Performance Director. Former Norwich City defender Malky Mackay looked to have the world at his feet from a managerial perspective following promotion with Cardiff City. He was sacked following a fallout with owner Vincent Tan though, and his move to Crystal Palace fell through following the release of some damning private text messages. As a performance director for the Scottish FA now, Mackay is supposedly tasked with overseeing the development of young Scottish footballers. Michael Laudrup, unattached. Another manager who made a glorious start, but not such a glorious end to life in the Premier League, Swansea City fans will always have fond memories of lifting the League Cup under Michael Laudrup's stewardship. Since his dismissal in February 2014, Laudrup has had 2 jobs in Qatar, most recently with Al Rayyan. Rennie Meulenstein, Australia Assistant Manager. Another high-profile assistant manager, René Mjølnstein, had a crack at the top job in the Premier League with Fulham, but things didn't quite work out. The experienced Dutchman, who spent so long working under Sir Alex Ferguson at Manchester United, struggled in West London, followed by brief stints with Maccabi Haifa and Kerala Blasters. He has been Graham Arnold's assistant manager with the Australian national team since March 2018. Chris Hughton, unattached. The unluckiest man in football, or a fine man manager who has a ceiling and a not particularly entertaining brand of football, depending on which way you look at it, there can be no doubt that Chris Hughton is a very good manager. He left Brighton after 5 years with the club at the end of last season, but he won't be out of work for long. David Moyes, unattached. The LMA Manager of the Year in 2003, 2005 and 2009, David Moyes had unusual longevity during a 9-year stay with Everton. He always looked likely to be Sir Alex Ferguson's successor at Manchester United, but the impossible job proved to be just that. A club synonymous with stability and consistency at the time didn't even give Moyes a full season. He has managed Real Sociedad, Sunderland and West Ham since then, but is currently out of work. With the right project and board behind him, there's still a good manager in there. That's it for today's video. Thanks for watching, let us know your thoughts in the comments and any future video ideas you'd like to see from me. Give us a like if you enjoyed the video, and as always, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications if you enjoy our content.